Hi, I'm Jonny Wickersham, aka Two Bags. I play guitar in Social Distortion.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Mike Squires. I am the host of Couchers Podcast. Welcome to the Couchers Podcast, episode number 273. And my awesome guest, Jonny Wickersham, also known as Jonny Two Bags. Jonny is a punk rock legend out of Southern California. And I feel like these last couple episodes and the next episode, I am tasked with introducing people that just don't require my fucking introduction. But for people who are listening or watching, you already saw the poster for the show. Jonny has been in Social Distortion for 20 plus years, almost 25 years maybe. 24 something years. He was in Cadillac Tramps, Youth Brigade, US Bombs, really a punk rock legend. And we had a great conversation. Social Distortion is currently on tour. I don't know if the episode will come out, if they'll still be on tour then, but they just did 3 nights at one of my favorite venues in Seattle, the Showbox Theater at the Market. The band was awesome. Bell Rays opened up. They were incredible. Love those guys. And we got a chance to catch up here. I met Jonny a few years back when I was a musical director for this private gig, and he was playing guitar, and, you know, we hit it off. He's a very cool, easy to be around dude. Great player. Hope you enjoy this episode. Jonny has some great stories to share with us. If you are enjoying the Couch Riffs podcast, please, by all means, consider supporting Couch Riffs on Patreon. Everything that happens here, all the equipment, all the building improvements, everything costs money. It comes out of my pocket. I'm lucky to have a studio partner who's radical, Ryan Bruce Fluff. If you don't know him, Riffs, Beards, and Gear. And that's amazing. However, Patreon is the only place where Couch Riffs is able to generate any sort of money to kind of try and make it back to level. So I want to thank everyone who's already supporting. And you can also go over there and join Patreon without a paid subscription component and see the episodes a week early. I also, when I'm able to do the Couch Riffs covers, which I have some coming up planned, I post them there early, and that's the only place where you can download the audio and have it to listen to. Otherwise, you can only listen to it on YouTube. So, patreon.com/couchriffs. Thank you so much for your support. Enjoy this episode. Go see Social Distortion. Legend doesn't, need my endorsement. Legendary band, still killing, sounding fucking great every night. And don't forget the golden rule as you travel through life. Huh? Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't be a fucking asshole.
Hi, I'm Jonny Wickersham, aka Two Bags. I play guitar in Social Distortion, amongst other various projects. I've been in other bands. I've been in the Cadillac Tramps for years, Youth Brigade, the US Bombs. I tour sometimes with Me First in the Gimme Gimmes. I've got my own solo project, which is called Jonny Two Bags, with an album called Salvation Town. I don't particularly like going under the solo artist moniker. I'd rather have a band,
Sure,
but be the boss of the band and do my own material. Maybe we'll start calling it Salvation Town.
Why not? That's a pretty
I mean,
good
Whiskey
name.
Town worked great for Ryan Adams, right? So
for a while, it did. Jonny, welcome to the Couch Riffs podcast. I'm super stoked that you made time here. You're here.
Thanks, Mike
for
Squires.
3 days, 3 shows.
3 shows at the Showbox, the old one.
my favorite venue in all of Seattle and maybe all of the world.
I like it. I don't know if it's my favorite venue, but it's cool.
Yeah.
I like it much better than the other one.
Right.
The one we just walked past.
I was telling you the story about how when I was 23, I thought that if I could just get a gig at the Showbox, I'd be able to pay my rent and I'd probably I would have made it. And now I've played there 25 times and I'm still wondering when I'm going to make it.
Well, you've paid the rent a bunch of times.
I'm sure. Yeah. No, it's true. The rent is happening.
I mean, what is making it, right?
Well, that's a great place to start.
Because you and I are side guys, man.
That's a fact.
I mean, that's what it really is, you know. And I'm happy to have it, man. Like my friend Smitty says. But yeah, you know, like, is that making it? I don't know. I'm grateful for the gigs, you know, for sure. Especially 25 years with Social D now.
That's amazing.
You know,
you're playing the guitar and you don't miss a meal, right?
That's right. And
you get
and
your
the
phone
bills
services on. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty sweet life.
Yeah.
How do you think, I mean, I guess we're just like getting right into the deep end and we'll circle back. This is normally not the format style, but
real talk with Squires and Two Bags.
That's right. My perspective as a 53-year-old is much different than my perspective as a 23-year-old. And I think that's to be expected, right? But I quit playing music and went to college for all of 3 weeks until I was like, this is dumb. This is not my life. This is not the life for me. You know, when you have an idea of what making it is or what being successful is as a young, inexperienced person, your life is full of expectation, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you gain experience, you're like, well, I don't know, all the cliches. The journey is better than the destination most of the time, right?
Yeah.
How has your perspective changed in 30, 35 years?
It's changed enormously. I mean, first of all, what we thought this was when we were kids is not really what it is.
Right.
Right. Wow. I mean, there's a business side to it that you just don't take into consideration at all when you're a young kid dreaming of playing in a rock and roll band and being on stage. You know, I don't know. It's, you know, it's completely a different thing. And, you know, I've learned over the years that, you know, a big part of it is becoming a responsible adult, just like in any other profession or in just life in general. I remember thinking, you know, when I was in my teens and even into my early 20s that like, oh, this is, you know, rock and roll's the perfect job for me because I'm such a fucking flaky blow it case, ADD,
sure,
you know, just head in the clouds, irresponsible dude.
You so yeah, the tunes though.
So being in a band, that's definitely like, I mean, primarily it was the love of the music. You know, it wasn't all the other bullshit. That was not an attraction for me. I mean, I'm certain that being a bit of a broken, damaged human being, that there was a small part of me that I have a certain amount of narcissism, you know, narcissistic traits that would, you know, guide me to, you know, that would want me to put me on stage in front of people and get the attention, you know, maybe the attention that I never got as a kid, you know, the attention that I didn't get, you know, in school as, you know, in my younger years, you know what I mean? I didn't have a lot of friends. I was definitely kind of an outsider. I was already getting myself into a lot of trouble. You know, so.
Did you grow up in California?
I did. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so I've learned that I can't be that way, you know, like, you know, I'm perpetually late for everything and I'm getting better at 57 years old, but you know, being late for lobby calls and shit like that just doesn't fly, you know. And
That's right.
I've had, you know, we had a tour manager for years that used to refer to me as life with last.
You know, they say if you're on time, you're late.
Yeah. And our bass player, Brent, is always early.
Right.
And he's the guy that's at least 5 minutes early. And if you're the last guy showing up and you're 3 minutes late, he's just glaring at you because he's he's showing up early out of courtesy for others. Right.
He sounds like a person who folds his underwear very tidy.
I wouldn't say Brent's like that. No, he's pretty mellow and
I fold my underwear. I'm not talking shit about him.
but he's definitely like the kind of person he's a very, very considerate person. I like to call him the most Christian-like atheist I've ever met.
Well, yeah. No comment on American Christians.
That's okay. We don't have to go there. We'll talk about rock and roll today.
That sounds good. It's a tough time in the world, or in this part of the world.
I don't even want to put my fucking energy into any of it at all. I'll do my thing. Right. It's time to cast, but I don't even talk about it with people anymore.
I think that's wise. It's a good way to lose friends.
Yeah. You know,
some of them, at least.
Yeah. I'll say this and then we'll move on.
All right.
You know, social media, Jesus, man. It's like in the last several years, you know, there's people on social media that are friends of mine that I've known since I'm a kid. And we differ in our ideas.
Sure.
And via social media, I find myself just like, man, you know what? Like, fuck that guy, man. I hate him. And then we see each other somewhere, and it's just like, hey, man.
Yeah. What's up?
Fucking great to see you. And everything's just totally normal. Same guy. You know what I mean? And I'm the same guy. And it just occurred to me, like,
it's the equivalent of being cut off in traffic. It really is. Like, you can get cut off in traffic by your own mother and probably curse her. Like, there's something about barriers that humans are not good with.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, there's that.
We all have a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
When did you start playing music, and what was your initial draw? And was guitar your first instrument? Were you a school band kid?
Was it? Well, my dad was a musician, and so and he was a guitar player. So I'm trying to think, like, I mean, there was obviously guitars around me my entire life, but I don't know if I had picked one up before I started playing the snare drum in third grade or not. I kind of feel like maybe I didn't really. No, I don't think he had showed me my first set of guitar chords or anything, but yet. So, okay, I guess my first instrument would have been the snare drum in third grade.
Right.
And I remember learning, you know, the everything that I don't remember.
Little drummer boy.
Anymore.
Right.
But I could read drum music a little bit, and you know, I knew what quarter notes and eighth notes and whole notes were and all that. And then my second instrument was the saxophone, alto, fourth and fifth grade, or fifth and sixth grade.
Yeah.
Which I put down for guitar. By then, my dad had showed me at home how to play. He taught me how to play a song by Hoyt Axton called Greenback Dollar.
Okay.
And he wrote down the lyrics, and then he had one of those, it was a rubber stamp with the chart for finger positions for chords. And he put that over the lyrics in the spots where where the changes were, and it was, I think it's E minor.
You still remember it?
Yeah, it's E minor, G, C, all the cowboy chords.
Yeah.
So I learned that, and I kind of learned how to sing it. And I hated my voice though, so I didn't really grab a hold of the singing thing too much. But I could phrase it. You know, I could play it and phrase it and sing basically the melody, but I didn't like the sound of my voice at all. So I didn't really like, that's a whole nother story for years later. But that's my first, that's the first thing I learned on guitar. And then a buddy of his that played in one of his bands showed me how to play Sweet Home Alabama. And he also showed me how to play, no, my dad actually showed me how to play a couple of Chuck Berry licks. And
those are still coming in handy
to this day, right? That's all I got, man. I got those. I got, you know, double stops. I can kind of play in the minor keys a little bit. And that's about it. Still.
Yeah. It's like being gifted a set of vice grips. It's like the best tool.
So yeah, I'm messing around with guitar. I just lost interest in saxophone, you know, between 6th and 7th grade. And then and I loved Led Zeppelin and I loved the Stones. And I also loved a lot of the stuff my dad was playing. I loved you know, he was into rock and roll, but he was into country music too. He played it all, and folk music. Sometimes he had a band. It was always covers. He wrote 2 songs in his whole life, and they're good songs, but he just wasn't confident as a writer.
And this is the 70s.
This is the 70s.
So is he like Willie Whalen?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then also things like the Kingston Trio.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I'm not really that into that.
People wanted to hear it though.
Yeah. I mean, I probably would have dug it maybe more when I was younger, but then as the years go by, the Kingston Trio to me just become more and more vanilla.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And yeah, he liked Hank and all that stuff, and he loved the Stones. Actually, the funny thing is he wasn't really like a hard rocker though.
Right.
I mean, he was a full-on hippie and shit. So he was kind of like a long-haired. He was like a long-haired fucking country guy. You know, I guess that nowadays they call it outlaw country.
Sure.
But he was a folky too, right? And he didn't play lead guitar at all. He was all rhythm guitar as an accompaniment, you know, and a singer.
Mm-hmm.
But he played banjo too, and he could play a little bit of bluegrass and stuff. So the rock and roll stuff, as far as like real like rock and roll that had a little bit more of an edge, I guess he loved the Who and he loved the Stones. But he wasn't into Hendrix. He wasn't into Zeppelin or for sure he wasn't into like Sabbath or any of those kind of bands. That wasn't his thing. He was more like partial to like the Mamas and the Papas and things that were more vocal
melodies and harmonies
and stuff like that.
Sure,
he really
that makes sense.
Yeah. But he loved the Stones. But he would always say, yeah, Mick's great, but he's a shouter. Mick's a shouter. He's not a singer. But he loved him. You know what I mean?
Sure.
When I was a kid, I had a life-size poster of Mick in my bedroom, like from like, you know, the Mick Taylor years, you know, with the tight jumpsuit thing and the blue eyeshadow. And it's like, you wake up and like, oh shit. That my dad put it in there. He thought it was cool.
You wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, ah!
Yeah. Dude, you know what? Last night, I fucking woke up. So I typically put things like, I listen to people when I'm falling asleep. I like to put on like a podcast or sometimes like something on YouTube or something that's just like to listen to somebody talking, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
do you put on stuff that will subliminally affect your thoughts as you drift into sleep?
Not really.
You're like, nah, just whatever.
Well, just kind of, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? There's actually this guitar teacher on a YouTube guy that I like the tone of his voice when he's talking. And it's kind of like it's like my version of like the Golf Channel.
Right.
Or whatever.
Sure.
And so I'll put that on. But YouTube, unfortunately, has all fucking commercials all the time.
Oh, sure.
Dude, and it's like, And somehow YouTube knows how old I am. So it's like
walk-in bathtubs and Aflac.
Yeah, it's like, have you fallen in the shower? You know, like, but it's all loud. It's like louder when they pop on in the middle of what you're listening to. So at some point last night, I fucking grabbed my phone and I vaguely remember doing it, and I fucking threw it on the floor of the hotel. Right, my brand new iPhone, because I ran my 7 into the ground and got a 15 Pro or 15 Plus. No, it's fine. Luckily, there was a carpet kind of like this, under the bed, and it stuck out, like, because it's, you know, the hotels now are all like fake hardwood. Yeah. So, and I vaguely remember doing it, like something must have pissed me off, and but I threw it down so hard that it literally, the charging cord, it tore the whole thing out. Like the cord and everything was on the ground. So I must have really fucking ripped it out, dude.
Temper.
There used to be this, there was a guy, I guess he's passed away too. What a bummer. I just found out like a year ago or so that within the year that he passed away. But there's this guitar teacher that named Woody Mann. Mm-hmm. And like I went down to McCabe's in LA years and years ago and got a couple of videos, right? To learn how to play some fingerstyle blues stuff. Yeah. It's funny because back in those days, I wouldn't let anybody know I was doing it from a video. Now I don't give a shit.
Sure.
But right,
well, that's how everyone
I'd be like,
learns
people
now.
would be like, dude, that's some cool shit you're figuring out. How did you? And I'd be like, well, I just put the fucking Robert Johnson record on and fucking figure it out, dude. What do you think? Yeah.
How do you do it?
Yeah. You know?
Well,
But anyways, this guy Woody Mann had he was even more fucking soothing than this other guy. It's like I just put the tape on. It was VCR, right? I just put it on and just like fall asleep listening to it because it was the guy's so mellow, you know. And he was a great player too. He played a bitchin' old J185.
Nice. Nice.
Where were we? Oh, music and all that shit. You were in
the 7th grade, and you had a terrifying night terror poster of Mick.
Oh, Mick, yeah. No, that was when I was really young. No, that wasn't the 7th grade. That poster, those days were when I was like in 1st grade.
Oh, wow.
1st and 2nd grade.
Okay.
Yeah. So
your dad have positive rock and roll influence.
Yeah, my dad was, you know, the music was all around me, man.
What did he think about you getting into music?
Well, he was very supportive of any of that, but he fucking hated the music I eventually got into, you know, which was the punk rock, man. He fucking, which was that was 7th grade. And dude, he was just like, this shit sucks.
So 7th grade was like 1981.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So for me,
pretty good year for
my hair,
LA
like,
punk rock.
Late 1980 is my entry into the punk scene, cut my hair and all that. But I also wasn't hanging out yet. There was only 2. We were living up in Mammoth at the time.
Okay.
Because my dad would get gigs up there. And so we'd go back and forth between SoCal and Mammoth, you know. And we were up there, and there was like 2 other punk rock dudes in the whole town. And those are the guys that's how I learned about everything, you know, like, but yeah. So, I mean, by a lot of people's standards, 1980s, like late. You missed it.
By LA standards, though.
Oh, it's been over since 78, you know, or whatever. Right. So, but yeah, I'm one of those, you know, kind of obnoxious, what they consider to be the elder statesmen, the bleeding deacons of LA punk rock would consider us to be a bunch of fucking dunker punkers that missed it and show up on our skateboards and trash the bathroom at the show. Whatever. I get it though. I understand.
What do you remember what the gateway band was for you?
The first punk song that I think I ever heard, what I want to remember is that I got a hold of a cassette tape that had a bunch of stuff on it, and what stands out to me in my memory is a song by the Buzzcocks called "Fast Cars" and "Boredom." It's like, I think it was isn't that the one? There's 2 versions, and one of them is like the intro to Fast Cars into Boredom, or maybe it's the other way around. I can't remember, but it just was fucking, dude, it sounded so cool, man. It was so weird sounding, and just, you know, that siren guitar, you know, and just the eerie, you know?
Sure.
But but the stuff I was exposed, yeah. So that, and then like,
So it wasn't wasn't American punk rock. They weren't LA bands that were your gateway.
no.
Right.
And then I heard the Pistols, and I heard the Clash, and all the kind of more obvious British stuff, that was big, that was popular. And when I was that age, I was a bit of a thief and a shoplifter, and so I was stealing records. Like prior to this, I had built a collection of fucking disco 45s that would blow your mind. I wish I still had them all.
Right.
Because I would go down to, so what year would that have been? Like 77, 78, right?
Sure.
I'd go down to this pharmacy, a Rexall that sold records.
Yeah.
And they had this bin with 4 or 5 rows of 45s with these metal rods that would go through the holes.
Yeah.
And they could lock them. They were all locked. And if it was like, and they would just run the rod through it. And if it was a picture sleeve, they would just poke a hole in it. They didn't give a shit, right? But I would tell the lady, I go, hey, I'm going to buy a record. And she would just come over and unlock them all and walk away. So I'd pick out a bunch and shove as many as I could in my pants and then go buy one. And I would do that like once a week or something, and,
right.
and it was, what it was it was set up. It was basically Casey Kasem's top 40.
I was going to say they always had, there were some originals, and there was like always a rack of like covers, like re-recorded songs, like the hits, right?
No, it wasn't that. It was, you remember Casey Kasem, though,
of course.
Right? So it was basically America's top 40, whatever the top on the charts.
Right.
So, which is why it was all disco. But there was also, I remember I had Kiss Dressed to Kill, with the picture sleeve when they had the fucking suits on and shit. And, there was rock and roll shit in there too. But I was a little kid, man. I mean, this is when I'm like 3rd or 4th grade.
Right.
So
you're like, I was 38. I'm
and I just, I a lot of that music was fucking cool, man. I mean, it kind of got a bad rap because of whatever. I guess it was that movie or something, even though that movie's actually pretty good too. Like, but I mean, fuck, dude, like Sister Sledge and
Chic,
Gloria Gaynor. She did I Will Survive, right? Like,
sure.
Fuck, man. Like, it was basically just the next evolution of R&B and soul music, I suppose, right?
Sure.
But with a lot more cocaine and funny suits
and massive high production.
High production, right? Yeah, but there was some. Remember the
vicious
disco
players,
version? Yeah,
vicious
insane
groove.
Yeah.
Talk about bass playing,
right? Yeah. I wonder, was Jamerson still around? Were those guys from like the Funk Brothers still around for that, or were they gone?
They were involved in that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know enough.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know,
because I think that it was all happening.
What was Booker T and what were they doing at that point? I mean, it wasn't that long.
It wasn't that long after, but I think that most of the disco was made in New York. I think, and those guys just weren't in New York.
That sounds right. Yeah.
But also, what the fuck do I know?
God, I don't know where all those records went, but I had a lot of them, man.
Easy come, easy go.
Yeah. But I was by the time I'm getting into punk, I'm still stealing shit.
Sure.
And I could steal, I'd wear a big fucking coat and steal a fucking 12-inch, no problem. I was really a good thief, man. And so if anything, I'm about the punk bands I was learning about. Like I remember, flipping through the records and Ian Dury and the Blockheads. Well, they look like punk rockers,
right? And
then putting that on when I got home, going, this fucking sucks, man. So I wasn't ready for that.
Right.
I wasn't ready for Elvis Costello, who like just a few years later I became obsessed with for a long time.
Same.
You know what I mean? Well, I know exactly what happened. And in '87, when the album Blood and Chocolate came out.
Love that record.
My friend Tony Scalzo, who's a good buddy of mine, that grew up in Orange County, from the band Fastball.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Dude, I learned a lot about music from this guy, and he showed me a lot of guitar stuff, and just a really great, talented dude, great songwriter, great singer. We were driving up to LA to pick up our buddy T-Bone, who had gotten into some kind of thing somewhere, and we were going to pick him up like kind of late at night. And we're in Tony's little, I think he was driving a little Toyota pickup in those days, and Blood Chocolate had just come out. He had it on cassette, and he put it on, and I said, I don't like Elvis Costello. He goes, just shut up and listen. Just shut up and listen to it. And I go, all right. And on the drive, we listened to the record, and the first thing that really caught my ear was the first tune was I Want You. No, it was I Want You.
Oh, it's like the saddest song
just
ever.
Because we weren't talking, we were just listening, you know what I mean? And it's dark out, we're driving up the freeway, and I just was like, it was so fucking that song's heavy, right?
Yeah, maybe the heaviest.
Yeah. And so that was the one that really brought me that got me to start. I ended up borrowing the tape from him that night, I remember, and keeping it for a few days. And I was just like, fuck, man.
I think that record is a sleeper in his catalog.
Yeah.
I think it's so good.
Yeah.
It's what else is on there? Crimes of Paris.
Yeah. Hope You're Happy Now.
It's so fucking spiteful, this fucking
Yeah.
record. It's like the gnarliest breakup record ever.
Yeah.
And Uncomplicated is also incredible. The whole song has got, one chord except for the bridge, which has got 2 more chords in it.
Yeah.
It's just like pounding the E the whole time. And it's just like, how?
Was that the last record with the Attractions for a while, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. Because then he went on and did King of the World with all those T-Bone and all those guys, I think, right?
Yeah, Allison or not Allison, Veronica, all that stuff.
Or that was after that even. That was after King of the World. And yeah, that's the record he wrote a song with McCartney, I think. And he had Ribot in the band.
What a career.
He had Mark Ribot playing on that record.
Pretty good guitarist.
Pretty good. Not super unique in his style, but pretty good.
Yeah, really vanilla. Copycat.
Yeah.
Who is that? It's funny, but it seems like there are a lot of things as far as the band, school band, and the time period of switching over. I didn't find punk rock until much later, but I guess I was in the 7th grade when I started listening to punk rock, but I was still 83 or 84 for me. But we have similar timelines in that way. That's interesting.
It's not that far off. I mean, it probably just those few years back then is a long time, but looking back on it, it's like it's nothing. It was like, that's just the same period pretty much, By 83, 84, punk in Southern California had become really big. Not big like 90s big when everything came back.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like...
not Fat Records big.
Yeah. None Rancid and Green Day and Offspring big. But Gary Tovar, the guy who started and owned Golden Voice, back then was putting on these shows at big venues like the Olympic Auditorium in downtown LA. They were just like, I mean, we'd go to shows there and he'd bring over all these British bands like the Subs and Cockney Rejects and fucking the Exploited and GBH and all those, they would come and play in Southern California, and they were just treated like kind of like rock stars, and they would headline these big shows, and then all the local bands would be on the bills too, and 7 bands. But like, it's just, you'd drive up to LA and go in this place, and it just seemed like just such an enormous place, and it was just a boxing gym or a boxing arena, But it just seemed so huge. But of course, fucking half the time I'm frying on acid, and they had these tables with kegs of beer around the place. And for $1, you could buy a fucking huge, warm beer.
Right.
And you could be a 12-year-old and, they weren't asking for any ID or anything. So, we were just fucked up, man. In fact, I don't remember most of those shows. because I was so fucked up. But it seemed big. It seemed like there was thousands of fucking kids there. And I went there in the 90s. Actually, Green Day played a show there. And it was after they were already super huge. So, but it was considered a fucking underplay, I
Right.
suppose. And I remember walking in this place and just being like, this is tiny. This isn't that big at all.
Right. I get that feeling in a lot of places that I walk into, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a legendary time for punk rock and for the LA music scene.
Yeah.
Were there ever any shows where you felt, because famously there were riots and the cops were always showing up, and basically people didn't want the riffraff of punk rock showing up anywhere.
No, people didn't dig it, man.
And by people, I mean, the general public.
Yeah.
They weren't having it,
It
right?
was such a threatening thing, I guess. There was like these organizations. There was this one lady, and I knew her kid. Bobby Two-Tone was her kid. That's not his real name, but
You don't say.
but she started the Parents of Punkers organization, and they would go
in
on
support.
No, like they were just like, okay, if your kid's into punk rock, like, we can meet and talk about it. Like,
It was like,
here's what my kid's doing.
It's like Al-Anon for fucking.
Yeah, but like just ridiculous though, stupid. Like, and then they would go on fucking Donahue or something and talk about what their
Search his drawers for safety pins if he's got safety pins.
Yeah.
Wow.
But something about that era though was that, and this is something that differs from at least from my perspective, from the original like Hollywood era, the older people that started the bands, like
Sure.
X and everybody that were like older than us. Whatever they were doing, it was kind of they were there for the art.
Right.
They were there, and and it's brilliant fucking art. It's great, right? My generation, by 83, 84, the people that were hanging around on the kind of more on the streets, right? And I knew so many fucking kids that came that were runaways, that would run away from home. And these are the kids that are on Donahue with their parents too. Like they're coming from like you got some mom on TV with her kid, and she's all worried about her kid, and her kid's rebelling, and she's a punk rocker, and maybe they're not talking about the fact that maybe there's maybe dad's at home, or or a creepy uncle.
Sure.
That there's other shit going on,
right.
And these kids are running away from that into the streets, and that's what it was, and
right.
Lots of drugs and lots of. Fuck, man, it was pretty wild. I mean, there was places, like there was this squat up in Hollywood called Motel Hell, which was an old, hotel that was abandoned and squatted by all these punks, and like what a fucking gnarly, fucking crazy, dangerous place. There was violence was through the roof, man, and
right.
And there were gangs, and it was gnarly, man.
It didn't go great for a lot of folks.
Mm-mm.
Unfortunately.
No.
Ironically, now people will say, oh man, I did this or that. It was so punk rock. And it's just, or oh, you're a rock star, like giving someone an attaboy, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been a compliment back then. And didn't go great for a lot of people. A lot of people died, a lot of overdoses.
Yeah.
I know Shane Enholm. He's been on the podcast, and
shit.
He was around
Shane
then. I know
was there, dude, and yeah,
right.
Like he was there.
Yeah, I'm talking about having a rocky story.
Yeah,
but
for sure. I know
coming out on the other side.
Shane's story, a lot of it, and
what a dude.
Yeah, he's great.
What a dude.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the music. When did you decide, okay, I can play some chords, I'm going to play with some other people, like learn some songs? And like, what was your first band? Did you get together with kids at school, or were you just like a bedroom player forever?
No, I actually tried to jam with people pretty early on. And it's weird, like, especially coming from, this kind of shows like my relationship with my old man, which was not always we weren't always super close. I remember jamming with some other kids. There was a drum set and a guitar amp and maybe a bass player and a bass amp. I don't remember there being a PA system.
Right.
Just making noise. But weirdly, I remember being unsure or confused about, well, how does it work? How do you make this work to where you can put a concert on? Like, how does I remember trying to think about it, and I'm like thinking back on it. I'm like, well, how did I not know that? That's what my fucking dad did. Like, how was I not? I don't know if I'm even making sense right now, but I remember like not knowing how does this all work?
Well, there wasn't even fucking MTV yet. So unless you went to a concert, you didn't see that there was a public address system.
Yeah.
There was no music video, there was no YouTube, and there were no influencers telling you how to do shit.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how music happened. I heard the records and I was like, how do these sounds happen? I didn't understand that, Echo and the Bunnymen played guitars, really. They didn't sound like the Ramones.
Yeah.
The guitar sounded like it was a different instrument as far as I was concerned.
I remember wondering about the PA system. I remember wondering, like, well, do they have other guitar amplifiers that they sing through or something like that?
Yeah.
But again, like, why didn't I know that? That's what my old man was doing. Like, but we didn't always talk about things.
Well, also, like, that might not even be something that ever came up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It just wouldn't occur to you.
No. So funny.
That's not like tying your shoes, brushing your teeth, and wiping your ass. No. It's like, those are, public address system isn't a life skill.
No, it's not. But so I did a little bit of that. And what songs, I'm trying to think of what we played, like just goofy shit. Like, I remember trying to play. So one of the first things I learned, I mentioned learning the chords to Sweet Home Alabama. And then like a kid showed me, I like to learn it just slowly.
Sure.
Okay, here's a new thing. The Boston song.
More Than a Feeling.
Yeah.
Same chords.
Yeah. So I'm just
different rhythm.
So I'm just like, I remember kind of trying to jam that with these kids and stuff. And then later on, playing some, I remember playing bass and borrowing a bass from my dad for this, to play bass with some kids. And that was some rock and roll songs. I started playing drums.
Is that right?
At school, there was a drum set, and I learned how to play the drums, oddly, and I was pretty good. Like, I could play some beats and some fills, and I have a memory of being at somebody's house. I think it was those guys that I was playing bass for, and getting on the drums, and by then I'm listening to Black Flag, though, and stuff like that. So I could play a Black Flag song called No Values on the drums, and I thought that was pretty rad.
What did they think?
They didn't really want to play that.
They wanted to play More Than a Feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
And they wanted to play some rock and roll stuff.
They wanted to play Stranglehold.
So I just was kind of just I was very much dabbling, though. And I definitely wasn't ambitious about it at all.
Right.
And by then I'm smoking weed. I started smoking a lot of weed, like around 7th grade too. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so, which just killed any initiative to do anything at all.
I understand that.
No schoolwork was getting done. No, I wasn't playing music. I wasn't I was even too lazy to skate or anything. That's just a total, I'm already a full-on burnout, man.
Right. And that was also the heyday of skating.
Yeah. I mean, I could skate,
Right.
but it was mostly just a mode of transportation.
Me too.
I'd go to a half pipe and watch my friends skate and just sit there and smoke cigarettes and
Skate away.
just be lazy. So yeah, I didn't really get anything going with music till I was older. I remember there was a band in Costa Mesa that called Chronic Disorder, a punk band that had been around already for a couple of years, that was started by some older dudes than me. This guy Chalmer Lomry is a buddy of mine who played bass in the Vandals, in a band called The Hated. He had started that band with some other dudes a couple years earlier, and it was a band that had gone through a lot of lineup changes. And so I got asked to play guitar in it, like second guitar, at one point. And I went over to the main guitar player's place. Kurt Smith is his name, a buddy of mine. We still talk sometimes. And he showed me their set, and it was fast, that kind of California kind of punk, you know, and I learned all the songs, and I remember practicing with them one time, and the singer over at the singer's garage, he lived in his mom's garage, this guy Tony Newcomb, who is he is a musician of note. He went on to form the Brian Jonestown Massacre.
Did you say his name is Tony Newcomb?
Yeah.
I grew up with a guy named Tony Newcomb.
Did you?
Definitely different guy.
Different guy. Anyway, so Tony, or Anton, is the leader of the Brian Jonestown Massacre, and he's an old friend of mine, and we kind of grew up together for when we were kids and went to school.
Legendarily well-adjusted band.
Yeah, they've got their share of turmoil, but he's actually pretty good, man. I saw him for the first time in years in Berlin just a few months ago. It's good to see him. But he was the lead singer of this band at the time, Chronic Disorder, and so we practice it. I remember practicing over there once, and I remember smoking a wet daddy before going over there.
Yeah,
so super cool. Right, Sherm.
Yeah,
and so I was fucking high, man, and playing. I remember, barely remember just sort of playing with these guys, and then the next thing that was going to happen was we were going to play, and there was some stuff that was in the works, a couple of parties, I think, and then an actual real show at this place called the Cathay de Grande in Hollywood, and which was a real venue, and I didn't show up for any of it. I just wasn't there. So I was instantly like, my tenure in that band was about 5 minutes, but I couldn't even bother to show up, and
is that right?
Not that I didn't want to play. I just didn't have any focus. I was getting loaded.
Right.
I think the drugs came first.
Sure.
Over anything like that, you know what I mean? And so
assuming by that point you'd graduated away from smoking weed.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I was doing everything else at that point.
Sure.
Everything.
They weren't 2 bags of arugula.
No.
Assuming.
Yeah, so I actually wasn't able to do anything serious regarding music until after I got sober.
Yeah.
Which was a few years later. I got sober pretty young. And after that, things changed, and for the better, obviously.
It has a tendency to have that effect on folks.
Yeah. I'm real lucky, I'm real lucky to have been able to change my life at a young age.
How young?
I was 19. I was almost 20 when I got sober. I got just shy of a month shy or so of my 20th birthday. I got sober, and after trying to get sober for like about 9 months of going in and out, and
fuck, it's a hard time to get sober at that age. You
know what? It wasn't in that regard that you're talking anyway. Like, it wasn't like I felt like, oh man, if I get sober, I'm going to miss out on all the fun, because it was so not fun already.
Right.
It was a full-time fucking miserable job.
Right.
And I wasn't that good at it. to be honest, you know what I mean? Like, I basically went right into like just the gutter
Right.
instantly, with drugs
Sure.
and petty crime and, all of it, getting locked up. I grew up getting locked up in and out of juvenile hall, youth camps. Once I became an adult, I was going, to Orange County jail on a fairly regular basis.
You don't want to be there.
Right. A lot of my friends continued on in the system.
Sure.
You know what I mean? A few of them were able to get cleaned up around the time I did too. Some of them got cleaned up for a few years and then returned to the lifestyle, and they're not even with us any longer. It's just, so it wasn't hard in that regard at all. Like, I never once feel like I'm going to miss out on the party if I fucking get my shit together.
Right. Doesn't sound like going down to Alex's and having a couple pints was your problem.
No, I don't know. I don't have any experience in any of that. I don't have any experience of getting loaded in a rock and roll way.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't about fucking, doing speedballs in the backstage of some fucking show with like beautiful women around and all these cool people. And
sure,
it was nothing like that. So I don't even have, it's not even in my,
even the fanciest times, not that glamorous.
Oh, I'm certain it probably isn't. Yeah. Because you still, the feelings are still there regardless of the outside circumstances. But when the outside circumstances completely fucking blow, it helps.
Have you ever
motivate you?
Have you ever watched Cocksuckers Blues?
I have tried to get through that before. I don't think I was able to.
It's fucking
it was
brutal.
It was a little much, you know what I mean?
It's brutal, man. Right?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm glad I never got on dope.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't either.
I like to go fast anyway.
Really? Yeah.
That was always my thing.
That wasn't my thing. I was the opposite. I mean, I would do anything that was around, and I but I like the other way.
Yeah. So after you got sober, how quickly did things shift for you? Because it sounds like you were at least able to take that energy and put it towards music.
I mean, things shifted instantly for me. I mean, like I said, I had a hard time getting there for a while. Like, I'd get a couple of weeks of being clean together, and then I would go back to it, for a while, and then come back. And it was back and forth like that for a while. Obviously, 12-step program, and finally it stuck. And from that point forward, things changed really fast for me because they were better. They were better. So the difference was very drastic. It was a big contrast. And so yeah, things just were better right away. Even before I was doing any music stuff, I just like, God, it was just nice to be able to have a roof over my head and clean clothes,
right?
And and a little job, in a job, and just
there are the weird comforts, even as awful as getting loaded is, and how what shitty effect it has on your life. You can create comfort zones within that misery.
Oh,
right?
For sure, yeah. But the only but the chief source of that comfort comes from the substance,
right?
And then the things that are that you need to do to get the substance. For me, I didn't have any source of income. I didn't have any kind of I didn't have money coming from a family or trust, or I didn't have a gig. I couldn't keep a job for,
right.
I'd get jobs, and as soon as I got my first paycheck, I would disappear.
And you're a kid, so you also didn't have any skills.
Didn't have any skills, and yeah, I was just, So,
what was your first straight job after you got sober?
Oh, after I got painting houses.
Yeah. That's a good gig.
I didn't like it, but
Well, it's not like you know, I like any job where when you do it, you see the before and after. Like you
Mhm.
see how you've made something better,
Yeah.
hopefully,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I'm also colorblind, so I don't think I could ever paint. Though I picked out black.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Did you paint these walls?
Yeah.
It's nice. It's a beautiful studio. I love it. Yeah, so things got better quickly, I would say, and Gabby, Mike Gaborno, who was the lead singer for Cadillac Tramps, he and I were in a halfway house together,
Okay.
and we wrote a couple songs. There was some beat up old acoustic guitar with literally not a nylon string classical guitar with 5 strings that someone had left there, and Gabby and I wrote the first couple of Cadillac Tramps songs there, and we started talking about forming a band like right away as we both entered the world of sobriety and everything, and so that would have been, the Tramps would have definitely be for me the first real musical endeavor of my life.
I think it's incredible that you don't have an experience of having to play your first sober show after being a fuck up, because I for sure had that. So you didn't have that terrifying experience of like, am I going to be able to do this sober after?
Oh, because I'd been relying on being loaded to perform before. Yeah, no, I didn't have that because I had performed in front of people a few times, but it wasn't like I had a gig where I was like,
Right.
got myself right for the show every night, and like
How
now I'm not doing
interesting.
that. No.
And you had a cohort in that band that
for
was
sure.
also
Yeah.
on the same page with you.
As well as our other guitar player, Brian, that
Right.
joined, that we found pretty right away. And in fact, the whole basis, the foundation of that band in the beginning was the fact that we were all sober.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now, that was not something that was, we learned, so we made the decision fairly early on to maintain to maintain our anonymity as a band, and not to, because, we didn't want, we played this club in Huntington called Night Moves, and the promoter of this place came up after the show and started yelling at me and said, you know what, you guys will never play here again because, all fucking 30 of your friends that showed up were drinking water all night. And he was pissed.
Right.
So we were like, you know what, maybe we don't talk about the whole sober thing. Plus, it was like, we didn't really want to be known as like the sober band or something weird,
Right. It's like, it's like the equivalent of being a Christian rock
kind
band.
of, you know what I mean? So, yeah. So, but oddly enough, though, as we, developed and we started playing shows and making records and touring, which is, we toured really hard for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
We, I think, were an influence on a lot of people, man, that met us and were like, couldn't believe that we were doing what we were doing and we were all sober.
Right.
So I think, we were able to really sort of carry that message to a lot of people via the band as a vehicle for that. It was cool, man.
I don't know how I didn't know
I remember
that.
playing
That's
a show in
amazing.
Santa Ana one time, and Santa Ana that was a kind of a rough town in Orange County where I grew up, and that was where we would go to cop heroin and shit. And
Yeah.
we played this venue. It was upstairs right off of Main Street in Santa Ana, and after the show, when we were loading out down these stairs into this, fucked up alley, there was this old wino dude out there. And I saw Gabby talking to him as we were loading our gear out. And then I saw Gabby grab, the guy got up and walked with Gabby, put him in his car and took him down to Charlie Street, a detox in Costa Mesa.
Right.
He was just started talking to this dude, and the next thing you know, he's getting him into a detox.
Wow.
So pretty fucking rad, man. You know?
That is rad. Service is part of the deal,
Yes, it is.
you know?
Mhm.
Do you still play with those guys sometimes?
Well, Gabby's passed away.
Got it.
Yeah. So we just in the past year and a half or so have been playing those songs.
Right.
Me, Brian Coakley, who wrote the lion's share of that material that we, on our 3 records, our Warren, our bass player, and Jamie, our mostly original drummer, was playing for a while, but he's living in Portland now. So we got our friend George from, right now he's playing in the Hangman, the Super Suckers, and like 14 other bands. He's
Sure.
busy. So he's playing drums, but we call it Cadillac Hearse, which is the title of one of our tunes.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have a logo that's the same font as
Sure.
our Cadillac Tramps logo. And Brian sings lead vocals because, again, he wrote all those tunes. So, he knows how to sing them.
Sure.
And it's been fun, man. It's like, so we try to look at it more as kind of an homage to our own band, or a tribute, to like the Cadillac Tramps, who aren't, but it's not the Cadillac Tramps without Gabby.
Sure.
I mean, Gabby was just so huge as a front guy, like there's just no way, you know what I mean? So, we think that works pretty good. We think that like we're able to maintain the respect for what it was and for Gabby, as our leader, and still go out and play the songs and have fun, and people are showing up and digging it. And so it's cool. It's cool.
Nice. Did you get the Social D gig straight from Cadillac Tramps? Was there a period in between? Was there overlap?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, there was no overlap in that band. No, not at all. We split up. So we started making records. We got a deal with this indie label called Dr. Dream. We put out 3 full lengths. And we started touring, and we basically lived on the road from about 90 till 95, about 5 years or so. We were 8-9 months just on the road in our van,
right?
And then we got another van. We were a 2-van operation at one point, and I thought I just felt like, man,
the lap of luxury.
Look at us go, man!
Right?
We got our 15 passenger. And then we got our cargo van for the gear and the merch and shit, and our 2 crew guys would drive that, and which we picked that up from the Beat Farmers, who San Diego's Beat Farmers, who took us on our first tour.
Oh wow!
Supporting them and basically showed us the ropes, man. And man, we got on famously with those dudes, and they were a band who were notorious for. You're bumming if you're opening up for the Beat Farmers at their show, because the crowd just doesn't care about you.
Right.
But that wasn't the case with us. Their crowd loved us.
It's like opening up for AC/DC or Motorhead.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
yeah.
Good luck.
So it went really well, and we became such good friends with them. And at the time, they were just fucking raging, and we were sober. But we still clicked, you know what I mean? And so they took us on several full U.S. runs.
Wow.
And they had the 2-van thing. So when we got our cargo van, we just basically followed the same model and everything. So we did break up in the mid 90s, like 95, I think it was 95 or 96. I can't remember. But what did I do? So...
What kind of interesting job surely you would get a job when you were home?
Oh,
were you always
we would come home from
always painting?
A lot of times.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would, when we were home for whatever amount of time the band was home for, whether it was just a couple of weeks or maybe at the longest a month and a half or 2 or something, you know what I mean? we would all be on the phone a couple weeks out, calling all our friends that were contractors and, like, hey man, we're going to be home for a minute. Can you put me to work? Cause we ain't making any, we never brought home money.
Of course.
We never made any money. And so, yeah, I did construction. I did,
you pulled into your driveway on the last fumes of gas, probably.
Pretty much, man.
Right.
So this was a period when a lot of people in Southern California, like everybody had a clothing company for a while for some reason. Do you remember when everybody had a clothing company?
Don't they still?
I don't know. But so like, yeah, there was all these like action sports, like skate companies and skate clothing and snowboard clothes and just, so I would work sometimes for friends of mine that had clothing companies. I'd work for them at their warehouse, or there was the ASR show in San Diego,
right,
which is a huge trade show for all that. And I would go down there and, work for my buddy Rags, building, trade show booths. Yeah. Just whatever, man, whatever I could do to just get the rent paid and everything. And then we'd, but at the whole time, just counting the minutes till we get back on the road.
Right.
Because I don't really want to be doing any of this shit. I want to be out playing gigs.
Of course.
But, so we split up. It was like a bummer, man. It was like we had worked really hard and we were doing well. I mean, as far as we had a really strong following from like San Diego all the way up the West Coast into Vancouver. We could do Vancouver. We'd go play Whistler. We'd go to Victoria and play at Harpo's, and then we'd head west. Calgary, we would fucking kill it, sell out shows at the university or at this place called the Republic, and then Edmonton, Regina, it started to taper off. And then you'd go across Canada and you'd always have to hit Thunder Bay on the way, some little bar that we'd play, and then we'd get into the East, and we just weren't. It was just the East Coast for Canada and the States we never really did anything. We were like rock stars in Western Canada. Right. Much music's playing us, and and just this whole thing, and we could sell out. Before we split up, the last headlining thing we did in Vancouver was the Commodore.
It's great.
Which is man, it's fucking
legend.
Yeah. And so we didn't quite sell it out, but it was packed. And we came home from that tour and we each made a couple grand for the first time ever. Right. And, tensions were high though, because mainly for financial reasons. Like we were already getting kind of burned out.
Right.
And we weren't able to really call it a living yet. Right. And we had differing ideas about the direction we should take in terms of, like, we were done with Dr. Dream, our obligation. We delivered our third record and it was time to figure something out. Brian and Gabby both wanted to try to get a major record label. I didn't want that. I was trying to sell them on a label called Epitaph. And this was right before Offspring and all that. But I was, a big fan of what Brett was doing with the label. I was a big fan of Bad Religion, and it was incredible what they were accomplishing on an independent level, even at that stage.
It's worked out okay for them.
Right. And I was just like, look, fuck the major labels, man.
Right.
That's it. Just, it might go huge, but it also might.
Right. It might ruin everything.
It could ruin everything. And we've worked too hard. Right. Something, I remember one day, Brian had set up a meeting with an attorney and a music attorney up in LA. Because apparently, like, you could get into some kind of a situation with labels through an attorney or some bullshit.
Sure.
And Gabby and him were supposed to go up together to talk to this person. But Gabby was working, hanging drywall that day, and was like, I can't make it, man. But he was kind of like, in all fairness, he was kind of taking a martyr's stance with it.
Right.
Weirdly, like, man, I got to work, dude. Like, I'm not going to go. Because there was already like something going on between the two of them that was pretty gnarly. They weren't getting along at all.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm in Long Beach. I'm on the phone with our booking agent trying to book a short West Coast run just to put money in everybody's pockets. Because now we had crossed that line. We're selling some T-shirts. The guarantees are getting up, you know.
Yeah.
Let's go up and let's just do this West Coast run, a short 2-week thing to put money in everybody's pockets. And then we'll figure out what to do next. But for now, let's just do this. And I still feel like I was a sensible voice of reason.
Right.
Right. But what ended up happening that day was they had a fight about this attorney thing, and we split up, or those guys both quit.
Right.
And they called me and said that was going on. And I said, well, you know what? Fuck you guys. I quit too.
There wasn't anything left to quit
we
at
just
that point.
Yeah, I know.
Like, well, fuck you, know,
can't
I quit.
Fire me. I quit. But but yeah, so it was just over, man. And God, I remember we had a meeting. We were always having a band meeting. It was
right. That's what it's
call a band meeting. You know, it was always a band meeting. But we had the last band meeting, and we had a new drummer, this cat Dieter, and he was just like, it was the best thing that I think had ever happened to him with music to that point. And he just couldn't believe we were breaking up. And he was like, what are you guys doing? He's from Austrian guy.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? I don't understand. Like,
he's like, everything's so great.
Yeah. And I just remember looking at him at this band meeting that we were having over in someone's house. And I just go, how does it feel, man? I said, how does it feel to jump on board a stinking ship, Dieter, or something like, it's just like, oh God. So we split up, and so Brian went on, he had a band already going at the time, his band Rule 62, and they went on to get a huge deal with Maverick.
Really?
Yeah.
With this lawyer.
Through his manager. And then Gabby went and got with the guy that had been managing the Cadillac Tramps at the very end. This guy that he did everything I asked him not to do. Like so our booking, we were self-managed basically, except for in the very beginning, our buddy Ace was our manager for the first few years of our band. And we would have never got off the ground at all if not for this guy, by the way. Like, I mean, he was our manager, our booking agent, our front of house guy.
Oh, wow.
Like, he did everything. He just hustled. Right. And then he couldn't do it anymore at some point. So he self-managed for the next few years until finally our booking agent was like, you guys got to get a real manager. And he recommended this dude. And we met with him. And I said, look, what we're interested in is someone to manage our affairs. We need a day-to-day manager.
Right.
We don't need someone to go shopping us around LA trying to get a deal so that you can take your commission and you know, like, that's not what we want. And I might have been speaking only for myself at that point.
Sure.
But that's what he did. He went and immediately started shopping the band around. It's like, oh God. So that didn't work out too well. But when we split up, Gabby hooked up with him, and he got Gabby a deal with Priority Records, which was a subsidiary of somebody or another, you know what I mean? And put some money in his pocket, and they made a record. Brian's band made a record. And I joined Youth Brigade.
Rad.
And I just, we made a record. We wrote a record and put it out on their label, BYO. And we hit the road, and I was happy as I could be. I was on the road still.
Right.
You know, I was in a different van, and we toured the US, and I got to get off the continent for the first time ever.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was fucking awesome. We went to Europe and Japan, and it was cool, man.
What kind of venue? Like, this is mid to late 90s?
This is mid to late 90s, yes.
What kind of venues is Youth Brigade playing in mid-90s?
Punk rock venues,
Yeah.
like, I mean, we played like the Roxy and shit in LA
Got it.
and places like that. But, in Europe, you'd go over and do a lot of squats
Sure.
and things like that. And, some of them were like beautifully run places with a little vegetarian cafe,
Yeah.
and the whole thing. And then other places were just barely a step above a shooting gallery.
Right. Sure.
So, but it was a great experience for me. I mean, I had never been to Europe. I'd been touring for a lot of years already, but had only in the US and North America. And I fucking dug it, man. And we had the Bouncing Souls with us. They were opening up for us, but they got really big. Like they passed. And the Stearns put their records out on BYO. But so it was a great tour. I had a good time. It was a long one. I think it was like 9 weeks or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a cool experience.
I am in Europe 3 or 4 times a year touring now, and it never gets old.
I love it.
Touring in general never gets old for me.
I dig it. Yeah. I kind of really like being overseas,
Sure.
but I like touring still. Sometimes to be honest, things change. We're older, and sometimes I feel like it can be a little lonesome because
Sure.
we're not all hanging out together all the time anymore.
Right. Well, after so many years, you're partners.
Yeah. Days off sometimes are kind of like, hey, where's everyone at?
Right.
Hey, you want to go get something to eat? No, I'm going to go do this.
Already ate.
Yeah.
All right. Well, where's the movie theater?
Yeah.
I'll go see movies by myself a lot.
Yeah.
Even when I'm home sometimes. I don't care. I'm into it.
But tomorrow we're going to go to the game, me and Dave.
That's great.
And Ben, our keyboard player.
That's great.
Our piano organ player, I should say.
Yeah.
I was giving him shit a while back. I was like, Ben, what? You can't refer to yourself as a keyboardist, dude. I'm like, come on, man. Look, man. Do you call Leon Russell a keyboard player? Or is he a piano player? Am I right?
No, you're
You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Is Booker T a keyboard player? Or is he a B3 player?
Or is he an organist?
Or is he an M3 player? I think he played an M3.
I like organist. It sounds
organist.
Sounds sophisticated.
It could also be an organist. Could also be.
Yeah, like the plaster casters could have been organists.
Right. Yeah.
Careful.
That's funny.
And so you did, that was one tour, or were you doing that band for a while?
Yeah, I was just in Youth Brigade for a couple of years, enough time to do a record and basically do a kind of a world tour.
Yeah.
And then I came home from that.
Did you say you also went to Japan with them?
Yeah. Yeah.
What a time.
I know, it was bitching.
Wow.
I really liked it. And then I wasn't playing. And then, so I got a call from Mike and Dennis. Dennis's wife, Christy, was pregnant with their firstborn, Duke. And he had mentioned to management, 9 months prior, like, please don't have me on the road at this time because I want to be home when my son's born. And, of course, they're in Europe.
Right.
And so, they asked me if I could go sub for Dennis. So I went over and I finished up that tour with the band, and it was basically the very last leg of the White Light tour. White Light, White Trash, White Heat. White Light, White Heat, White Trash.
Were the Super Suckers on that run?
Not over there.
Okay.
No. And then I came home from that, and I wasn't in a band for the first time in a very long time. And I just kind of worked and I started working in production, working for Golden Voice,
Mm-hmm.
doing stagehand work.
Talk about full circle.
Yeah. And I did that for a while and went out and worked on some tours. And that was a weird time for me, to be honest, man. I was kind of like very disillusioned with the whole thing, you know, as us musicians can be.
Sure.
And I was disappointed, and I thought, I guess I had, you know, along the way started to expect things to work out differently. You know, I thought things, you know, pointed in a direction of something else, and so I had to come to grips with all this, and it took a couple of years, I think, and to the point that eventually I made peace with everything, you know, as far as like, well, I guess I'm not supposed to be a professional guitar player,
Right.
you know. Maybe that's not what's in the works for me. And
It's a tough pill to swallow.
yeah, it was tough, you know, especially like, you know, on one hand, I liked working in that field because I was in an environment that I was familiar with and around people that I like people, you know, and I like being around people, like-minded people, and I like being around creative, artistic people and musicians and everything. I like our community.
It's also a way more steady paycheck.
And it was a good, steady paycheck. And, but at the same time, you know, when I'm on stage with a band and I'm tuning guitars and when I would rather be playing them, you know, there's that. But I made peace with it all, and I was out with the band, and by the time I had a great time, and by the time I got home, I was just kind of cool with it. Like, all right, whatever, you know, fucking who cares, man.
Right.
I'm home from this tour. I'm not home 20 minutes, dude. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm sitting on the couch like this in my apartment, and my bag is still parked by the front door. I mean, I just walked through the door. And my phone rings, I pick it up, and it's my friend Carrie from the US Bombs. And he said, "Hey, what's up? What are you doing? Our guitar player, Chuck, just quit the band. We're in the middle of this long tour with Agnostic Front. And what are you doing?" And it just so happens that they had put out this record that year that I was really into. Like, I listened to that record a lot that year, and I was like, I asked about how Dwayne was doing, the singer, and he said, "Oh, he's doing all right," you know.
It's a good first question.
And then I just said, "Yeah, I'm in, man." So I jumped in the van with these guys that afternoon.
Wow, really?
Yeah, like I lived not far from Epitaph at the time in Silver Lake, and they were there. They were on Hellcat, Tim's label. And I went over there and threw my shit in the trailer, and we took off and headed to the launch pad in New Mexico, and boom, I was in a band again.
So you learned the songs in the van on the way there?
I did. I basically had my guitar in the van, and I just was shedding the whole way and making notes and making cheat sheets. And my first gig, I had like just all these fucking pieces of, you know, paper in front of me, and did the gig. And
how'd the first gig go?
Went great.
Right.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Talk about Trial by Fire. That's
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
What about the rest of the tour?
Tour went great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. And then
how long did your tenure last?
With the Bombs?
Yeah.
Same as Youth Brigade, like a couple of years, long enough to do a record with them, and I was able to write, you know, like so we came home from that. I think it was from that tour that we went right into work mode, because it was time to do another record. And
this is like 98
or something.
Okay.
And we got a lockout in Gardena for a month. And me and Wade, the bass player, Chip, the drummer, and Carrie, the other guitar player, the main guitar player in the band, we would just lock ourselves away, all night. It was all night. We were doing it at night, and Chip had his 4-track, and we just fucking wrote songs. And it was the first time that I had ever been able to really, I wrote a couple things on the Youth Brigade record. I wrote a few Cadillac Tramps songs, but Gabby and I didn't really write a lot of that stuff because Brian at the time back then was really like prolific. He took writing songs as a craft very seriously, and that was something that I didn't understand yet.
Sure.
I was more of a guitar player that would like have a riff and an idea, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
But Brian wrote songs. So with this Bombs thing, I had been at that point been trying to become a songwriter already for a few years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of ideas, a lot of backlogged stuff, and I started just bringing my stuff to the table, and I ended up writing like half of that record that we did, and it's a long record. There's 18 songs on it.
Wow.
So it was really not lyrics. Dwayne, wrote pretty much all the lyrics except for a couple of things that I had that I brought forth that had some working lyrics that ended up being used.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really a good experience to write with a band and to be able to be part of the process in that manner. It was really it was really cool. It turned out rad, and I liked that record a lot. And so we wrote we probably came up with 30 things, and what we would do is we would give Dwayne, it's all on 4-track,
right?
And so we'd give Dwayne the cassette, and anything that he connected with, he'd write lyrics for.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. And so yeah, again, much like my experience with the Brigade, we put that record out and we went all over the place. We went to Europe. Like, I think I did 3 or 4 trips to Europe with them within like a year. Toured the U.S. and then that kind of got to this point where there's a lot of dysfunction happening. And
in a band?
Yeah, in a band. And things weren't looking too promising as far as the future of the band at that point.
Right.
And, that's when Mike called me up, and, Dennis had passed,
right,
a while before that. And Mike had eventually decided to keep the band going and called me up. Moving on to that chapter,
Right. And it's steady. Yeah. What's the longest period?
Years.
What's the longest period of time in that 25, COVID aside, that the band hasn't been, touring in a year? Like every year it's touring.
The first year that I was in the band, we only played, I don't even know if we played 30 shows that year, but beyond that, we've been very busy.
Right.
Yeah.
Godsend.
Mm-hmm. I mean, prior to COVID, we had been off of like a record cycle for a pretty long time. So prior to COVID, we were really going out for just a couple long runs a year.
Right.
But that's still, 7-8 weeks at a time. And,
as a musician, especially like you said, you're 56? 57. You can't take a gig you never take a gig for granted now.
Yeah.
At this point, I feel like, I don't know what I would say no to. Like, there's no room at this age. You have very little room to say, and you've got a cool gig. But for me, I'm like, I will take gigs because, I don't have a steady thing like that. It's crazy. But what a godsend. 25 years. And so how has that affected everything? You already had a clear conscience, a straight head, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and surely if you probably being sober helped you be a candidate for that gig. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Do you feel like you can feel like you, I mean, I hesitate to use the word relax, but do you feel like you can breathe a little bit now?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think that for a long time, I don't know if I really felt for a long time that I didn't know how long it was going to last. So there's things in life that maybe I didn't act on or move on when I should have,
Sure.
because I wasn't certain about my professional future stability wise, you know? So there's that. It's not like, yeah, cause you just, you know, dude, when Mike called me in 2000 and we were talking about it, he said to me, I think we got another 5 or 6 years we can do this.
Well, that's also, you know, I'm sure that's his, like, he probably was feeling long in the tooth at that point as well. You know?
Crazy, right? It's fucking
Sure.
crazy, man. I know.
Well, no, I mean, I didn't expect to live this long, first of all. Second of all, I got no retirement plan. My retirement plan is die. You know?
Yeah.
Die. Your tombstone will say retired on it. Congratulations on your retirement. Yeah, that's funny that he said 5-6 years.
I know.
Because at that point in 2000, he's like what, 34, 35?
He's 5 years older than me, so he's like 2000 you said, so I'm 32.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So he's 37 or something.
Yeah, so he's thinking, how am I supposed to be doing this when I'm 50?
Yeah.
And here we are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, incredible.
I mean, it's a lot has changed in that our, you know, the way we perceive rock and roll musicians. I mean, thank God for Keith and Mick and the Rolling Stones for upping the fucking
right,
the ceiling,
right,
as far as, you know, how old can you be and still do this?
Right. I saw them for the first time this year.
God, I've never seen them, man.
Really?
I missed out on all the fucking concerts, dude. As a kid, I went to lots of punk shows.
Right.
But I just never went to the concerts.
Right.
And I really wish I would have went to the concerts now.
I mean, I wish I would have seen them back in the early 80s but I don't know if that would have been the greatest time to see them either. I don't know when the greatest time to see the Stones was.
Well, the greatest time to see the Stones was, yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But you could have caught him in the 80s with, you know, Mick would have had his knee pads on and his football jersey and shit.
Right. I mean, it's all amazing.
Yeah.
And they were the greatest bar band I've ever seen. Yeah. The bar band with the greatest songs. They had no endings for songs.
Yeah.
It must be really painful for those other two guys. Right?
What, when they vamp for 5 minutes at the end of a song?
Well, just like, yeah, how are we going to end this one, fellas?
Yeah.
There's no endings.
I used to really hate those vamps on the records. I don't mind them anymore. I've changed, or I don't know what I've done, but I've done something.
Right.
Evolved or whatever. But yeah, you know, like at the end of Can't You Hear Me Knocking and stuff like that. Now I kind of groove on it, but it used to bug me.
The end of that song bothers me because it reminds me of Santana. It does. The end of that song bugs me.
Yeah. And then what else is there that does it? There's a few that do the same kind of gag, right? It's just like, okay.
But anyway, this has been
but the thing about
it's been a pretty sweet 25 years for you.
That tune has one of the greatest fucking guitar riffs ever performed.
They could fucking end it any way they want. Like, you know, they could all switch over to kazoos. I don't care.
Like just because of that intro. That intro lick, right? It's just like, fuck.
Yeah. Some of the greatest songs and riffs ever.
Yeah, Monkey Man.
For sure, I wasn't a huge Stones fan as a younger person, but as I've aged, you know, a lot of what I was into hasn't aged great. But like, I don't know, somehow I like almost like the Kinks best out of all of them.
Yeah, the Kinks are one of my favorites for sure.
I don't know.
To me, the Kinks are like the first, like, they are the first punk rock band.
They certainly have.
Not just because they had the distorted 3-chord guitar riffs. There's that, but mainly because of Ray's cutting, spiteful commentary on British life and their government and
well-respected
and
man.
social life and
Sure.
working your whole life for fucking a watch and a little Shangri-La, you know, just all
Right.
of it. And that dismal picture he created, you know, that to me, that's what makes them a punk band.
They also had built-in tension in the ranks because of the brothers.
Yeah.
Like, maybe Van Halen is the only band that has a pair of brothers
that got along.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone else just...
Dude, I was in a band with 3 brothers.
What? You were like
the Stearns.
You were... Huh?
The Stearns.
You were the...
Youth Brigade are 3 brothers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And 2 of them ran the label that put out their music and a bunch of other bands back in the day. So that was interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're not really in on all the jokes.
Mark and Sean Stern fucking argue, dude. Like, I mean, everybody knows it. I'm not talking out of school here, man.
Right.
Those guys, like, anybody who knows them knows that they just constantly argue.
I love my sisters, but I wouldn't want to be in a band with them. Maybe now that we're older, but when we were younger, no way.
Yeah.
So it's been an amazing 25 years for you. I'm sure, like, you know, as far as like getting to do what you've focused, you know, what you've aimed your life at. You also put out your first solo record 10 or 11 years ago.
It's been 10 years this year. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Why not?
Hey,
it's never too late to promote something.
Well, I mean, we're talking about the bombs too. I mean, but you know, you were saying that you early on you didn't really have the confidence to sing, and you know, this is your band, your record.
Yeah, I just, even going into the studio to make that record, I couldn't sing.
Is that right?
I mean, I could sing some background vocals. The thing is that I had been working on songwriting already for many years, but always with the objective of the singer of whatever band I'm in,
right? Hopefully
wanting to do the tune, you know, or work with me on finishing the tune with their own verses and right.
Sure.
So what that means is that my performance of said songs never went beyond me performing it as I'm writing it for my cat who's sitting on the couch with me.
Placeholder.
Right. I never was confident in the sound of my voice. I didn't know how to sing. I didn't know how to use the mechanism at all. And, which means I also never learned how to, having not been on stage with it, I never learned how to sell it. I never knew how to really sell the tune as a singer. In other words, perform it like I really mean it, you know, even though I did mean it as whatever I'm writing, I mean, it's real. You know, I'm not at Tin Pan Alley fucking writing fucking bullshit pop songs for other artists. I'm writing my songs still, but I just didn't know how to I wasn't a front person. So even going into making that record, I mean, the only reason that record happened was because my buddy Dave Kalish, whose studio we did it at, and he and I produced that record together. He had been trying to get me to. He's got a fantastic studio, Red Star Studios up in Silver Lake. You know, he was like, "Dude, come down and record one of your songs, man. You got songs like." Let's just record some of your stuff. Let's make a record. And I'd always be like, all right, yeah, you know, one of these days, maybe, you know, we'll see. And then finally one day he just goes, hey, you know, I can get Pete Thomas to come play on a tune.
Yeah.
And at that point, I mean, okay, all right, I'm not going to miss out on that opportunity to record a song with Pete Thomas.
Okay.
And that's when we did cut the first tune. One Foot in the Gutter, and the original version of it, as I had presented it, was just really straight ahead. I don't know if you've heard this stuff or not, but it was just a real straight ahead kind of tune, and you know, like kind of had like kind of a Burrito Brothers type of, you know, Americana alt country, whatever you want to call it, thing, which is what I wanted to do and had been wanting to do for a very long time, was that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we recorded it that way, and it just kind of sat there. It was kind of flat, you know, good enough song, but there was just nothing there. And Xander Schloss was playing bass. Do you know Xander? Do you know who he is?
I don't know him.
He's a buddy of mine. He's a great musician. He's a bass player for the Circle Jerks, and he was in the Weirdos and everything. He's a great songwriter, a great, you know, multi-instrumentalist. And so Xander was playing bass that day in there, and Pete started tweaking on the groove, and he came up with the groove as it is on how it's now, how we recorded it again. And it really brought the song to a whole different place, and it was cool.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, I didn't realize it in the moment, but I, you know, looking back on it, I was just like, once the record was almost finished and everything, I was thinking, like, I realized that, I mean, I was aware that it kind of had a little bit of a vibe of like of an Elvis tune, but I was like, oh fuck, he's doing like the pump it up thing,
right?
You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, this is like Pete's thing. Like, I don't know for sure because I wasn't there, but I would imagine that he probably brought that to that song too. Who knows what the original version of that tune might have been?
Right.
You see what I'm getting at here?
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, well then Pete's that's got to be considered a co-write, man, because he saved the tune,
right,
by bringing in the Pete Thomas thing.
That's pretty amazing,
right?
As a fan, that must have been pretty awesome.
Oh, it was fucking wild, dude. It was so cool, man. And then he ended up playing on most of the record. Dave Hidalgo Jr. played on 2 tracks. There's one song with Dave, his brother Vince on bass, and then their dad's playing guitar.
Wow.
That's on Wayward Cane. And it's interesting how we were able to, because we just put that record together over a couple of years, you know, so it wasn't like we went in and knocked it out. It was definitely sort of piecemealed together, sure, you know. But there's these little groupings of players. So on one song, Jackson Browne came in and did a harmony, and David Lindley did his lap steel thing.
Wow.
It's like David Lindley and Jackson Browne, those two together, that it's a musical institution,
right?
You know, and so like, fuck, I can't even believe this is like my record that this.
Imagine
this is happening.
20 years before making this record with all these folks, and you were calling contractors like, hey, can I come, you know, whatever, get a day of work so I can cover my bills. And now you're calling Jackson Browne to come in and sing a harmony.
Crazy, right? Well, I mean, I didn't call him.
Sure. But the calls were being made.
Dave worked all that out.
Calls were being
made.
Well,
here's how it happened. So the tune that he sang on was actually one of my oldest songs, that one of the earliest things that I brought to this thing. I had that song for quite a while. In fact, I have a version of it demoed that sounds like it could have been an SD song.
Right.
In fact, it's one of the ideas I brought when I first joined the band. But it didn't end up we didn't do it. But as we were recording it for the Salvation Town record, at one point I commented to Dave, I said, man, it's interesting how this is shaping up. It sounds like it could be like on a Jackson Browne record. It sounds, right? And he's like, yeah, it really kind of does. Cause the lyrics are about LA and, the whole thing and the changes kind of the vibe. So one day I'm talking to him and he goes, hey man, I'm going to go down to Genghis Khan, this little venue in LA, little bar. He goes, Jackson Browne's band are playing. They had, at the time, they had a Wednesday night residency, his band.
Right.
And they would call their friends out and people would come and sit in. And it was really cool. I went to a bunch of them. I wasn't going that first night that Dave went, though, because I had something I had to be at. But he said, yeah, Jackson's most likely going to show up and do a couple songs, which is what he did. He ended up doing it every week. He would show up and play a few songs with his band, because that's just who he is. He's that guy, he's cool as fuck, man.
Right.
And so I was just joking and I said, hey man, why don't you ask him to come sing on that tune? It's perfect for him. And he goes, oh yeah, I'll ask him. And we kind of looked at each other and laughed like, yeah, that's as if.
Right.
The next morning he calls me and goes, dude, I talked to Jackson. He's in. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, he said he'd do it. I'm like, holy shit, man. So it took a few weeks, for schedule wise to work out, but he showed up and did it. And It's funny because, so I was actually down in San Diego. It was a Sunday morning and I was down at my buddy Adam, the guy who makes the amps I play, at Adam's house. And Kalish calls me and goes, dude, Jackson's going to come in, in a couple hours. You should get up here. So I fucking, I beelined from San Diego back up to Hollywood and showed up at the studio about 15 minutes before Jackson. And he walked in. I was like writing out the lyrics for him. And on the drive, I was like, well, fuck, man. Like, how do we approach this? Like, if he sings like a super tight sort of third above harmony on the verses or whatever, it's like, it's just going to be, it could be anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, how do we feature him? Should we make it a duet kind of thing? And I was like, I don't know about that,
Sure. How daunting is that?
But then you gotta figure out what you want to do. Then you gotta be like the guy who's suggesting things to the guy who's showing up to help you out,
right?
Without coming off as too. Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah. It's fragile.
Yeah, sure.
So I just was like, I don't know, man. We'll see how it goes. I guess I couldn't really come to any kind of conclusions about anything. He shows up and that was my first time meeting him.
Right.
Super, super chill person, man. Great guy. And then we went to work and, he hadn't heard the song before.
He's been in the studio and he knows his way around a tune.
So we're in there and I'm sitting at the console, just kind of off so that I don't, we're not looking at, I don't want to look at him while he's working. Right. And I've got my notebook with all my notes and lyrics and shit. And he starts messing around with ideas and he starts to sing along on a verse and he's doing this really odd part. Right. And how in harmony, like, how sometimes like the fifth often sounds weird.
Sure.
You know, it's not really a melody, but it works with the melody,
Right.
especially if there's a third in there to make it sweeten everything up, right? That's
Sure.
just the physics of it, right? So he wasn't really, he was doing this thing where he was singing like, kind of like jumping from like the third above down to the part below.
Yeah.
And then back and forth, man. And it sounded so weird out of context. And I'm sitting there, I was just fucking, I didn't really like what I was hearing.
You're like, how do I tell him no?
And I'm like, I remember I was just nervously kind of doodling, going, fuck, man. And then, you know,
Fucking Jackson Brown's gonna ruin my song.
and then Kalish at one point, 20 minutes in, he's like, he kind of leans back in the chair and goes, man, this guy's got such good instincts. And I just thought, I didn't say anything. I was keeping it all to myself, but I remember thinking, what do you mean?
Right.
And bear in mind, dude, I'm a big fan of Jackson Brown.
Yeah,
it wasn't like, oh, this fucking random
some guy
opportunity to have a super famous songwriter come in and sing on my record. Oh yeah, I'll do it just cause. It wasn't like that at all. Like
right.
I was raised on his music.
Sure.
And I'm a fan of his music. And oddly enough, prior to all this, by about a year or two, when my father was dying, I was listening to For Every Man specifically all the fucking time.
Right.
Right, because it was a big record at home when I was a kid.
Yeah,
and it's kind of a long story, but when my aunt and I were moving my dad's stuff, he was ill. I came across some CDs and a little blaster that he had in his storage unit, and we were listening. And I put that on while we were packing up, and it was a heavy moment for me, dude.
Sure.
Right, and then when we moved all his stuff from Reno to Vista to another storage unit. On my way home that night from my aunt's house down there in San Diego, I was listening in the car. I took it with me and was playing it in my car on the way home, and I fell apart. I just started crying, and it was heavy. And then for the next period after that of a long time, I was just listening to a lot of Jackson records. It just went through a phase of like revisiting that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And developing this whole new, or probably maybe for the first time in my life, actually, like this appreciation for Lindley. You know what I mean? Even though I knew who he was for years and everything, I really was like, fucking Lindley, man. God, what a fucking genius. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then cut to like not that long after that, these guys are both on my record, right? I'm no proponent of The Secret. Or anything, right. But isn't that weird that you can put that shit out there and then and you're putting that much sort of mental and emotional focus on something, and then it kind of happens in life?
I think that
consciously,
especially if you've been doing anything like you and I both do a thing, right? We've been doing that thing for a very long time. So your community broadens, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just, I don't know. I don't think it's that weird. I think it, you subconsciously wanted it, and it should have happened, and it did.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So bearing that in mind, I'm listening to Jackson put this fucking stony ass part on my fucking tune, and I'm just going, oh my God, this is such a weird sounding part. It was so unmusical.
And then in the mix,
what he was doing, dude, and this is why Kalish made that comment about his instincts. He sang a harmony to the verses, because it's a song that's just got a tag. It doesn't actually have a chorus.
Yeah.
It's just verses with a tag. He fucking sang in a manner where he's swimming around the melody, and his voice would pop out in places, and you'd be like, that's Jackson Brown. Like, if you know Jackson Brown, you're going to know that's Jackson Brown instantly. He featured himself in a way. You know what I mean?
I do.
It's pretty cool, man.
That's pretty fucking awesome. And probably also, I'd have to go back and listen, but in a way that, because there was not a chorus, like it built the verse.
Yeah.
It built
sure.
the verse in a way that felt like less linear.
Yeah.
More dramatic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he totally added so much to that tune, you know.
Instincts. My cameras are starting to die, so we're going to start. Yours is still alive.
See you guys. Nice knowing you.
We got to do one gig together.
Yeah.
So we hung out for 3 days. We had 2 rehearsals.
Yeah. That was fun. I'm sorry I let you guys down with my ham-fisted guitar playing.
No way, dude. You're a champ. We were, the funny thing is, like, there's a gang of us there, right? And we were all excited to be playing with Clem.
God damn it.
And
man.
Here's the thing, and here's what I'm talking about. Clem is a dude who's been doing it a long time, right? And he's a dude that, you know, plays drums in a legendary band, but at the drop of a hat will go do a club gig for the love of playing drums.
Yeah.
He's an absolute lifer.
Yeah.
He was the first person at rehearsal both days, got in there, set up his drums. He didn't want to take a break, and he was the last person out the door.
So rad, dude.
And pretty fun to play Blondie songs with.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
God, dude.
And I think he had a run in the Ramones. I think he did a tour with the Ramones.
Yeah. He's awesome, man. That was really special. Like you said, for all of us, we were just like, holy shit, man. Mike got to do that Johnny Thunders thing with when Walter was still alive.
Right.
And Clem was on playing drums, and and Glenn Matlock. And they did that tour. And I saw the show in LA, and I saw Clem fucking holler at Mike in between songs.
Oh no.
Like, you gonna get that right finally?
Or something? No.
You know what a curmudgeon he is, right?
Sure.
Dude. I loved it. I was like,
yeah. Ouch. Oof.
Now you know how it feels.
What do you think about the Sex Pistols shows? I really want to see one of those shows with
that kid from God, I just met that guy. Well, I actually met him. His old band, they were called they got that cool song, In the Belly of a Shark. What the fuck is that? What were they called? The hardcore band that was on Epitaph.
The
Gallows?
The Gallows.
The Gallows, yeah. So they played some Social D shows at the House of Blues in Anaheim, but then they ended up getting, what happened? Something happened where the Disney corporate people like sort of looked into their music and decided that their lyrics were too offensive to play a Disney venue or some crazy shit. And so, but when I was in Europe recently with the Gimme Gimmes, he was on the bill. And I was talking to him in catering. He's a cool dude. I've heard good things about it.
Have
you?
Yeah.
Also?
I'm a big fan of Jonesy, and I would love to see. I'll see him in London next month.
Cool.
That'd be pretty.
Yeah, that's awesome,
fun. Man. How long does this tour go on for you?
Oh, we're just starting. Tonight's night 2, so we're out for about 7.5 weeks, I think.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And will that, at the end of the 7.5 weeks, that will conclude your touring for the year?
No, we got a whole end of the year run, which is mostly like West Coast. Like, we do these holiday things.
Yeah.
Where we play. It used to just be specifically the Anaheim House of Blues and Hollywood House of Blues, which is gone, R.I.P. We'd do some Vegas dates, some San Diego dates, and maybe even go up and do some Fillmore dates or something in SF. But I can't remember what the routing is right now, but we're doing that kind of thing. We did those for years. Every Christmas, the holiday season, we would just. One year was ridiculous. One year, I think we did over 30 dates in Anaheim at the House of Blues between like November, December, and early January. And then like 15
30
plus in Hollywood at that House
You
of
could do a
Blues.
6-month run at the Doll Hut.
Oh, God, right? Seriously, man. Every night.
Ooh.
That place was great, man, in the day when
Yeah.
Linda owned it. It was cool. And our friends, Steve Soto, worked the door, and Greg Antista, just our buddies. And it was a good hang. I love the Doll Hut. Linda was amazing.
Pretty fun little spot.
Totally.
And
It turned
it's
into something
small
else.
enough where, while you're playing, you could just set your beer on the bar.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
It's like the lion's lair.
Yeah.
And do you guys go do Australia or South America in the winter? Do you guys do that? Has that been a market for you guys?
I've only been to Australia twice. No, wait, what am I saying? I'm about to go for my second time with the Gimmes. SD's only been over there one time.
Wow. That surprises me.
I can't tell you why.
Right.
I don't know the why.
Right.
Same with Japan.
It's a long way to
We've
travel
only been to Japan.
for everything to make sense.
Yeah. I've been to Japan twice, once with Youth Brigade and once with Social D.
Seems like the Gimmes would be over there.
I'm going to do Europe I'm going to do Australia with the Gimmes after this tour.
Right.
Like I'm home for like 5 days and I go to Australia, and Hidalgo's playing on that run too.
Fun.
And then he goes to Japan with them, but I'm not on the Japan run.
Right.
Because the main guy's back.
Got it. What about 25? And what about more solo stuff? Any plans?
I didn't do it for several years at all. I kind of stopped playing. I don't know why. It just, wasn't really like catching interest. So I just, it just kind of, things just sort of peter out,
Sure.
I guess. And it's weird too, because that record was really pretty well received. I saw a lot of really great press about it. People seemed to get it. They seemed to understand what I was, trying to do with it. And not that it's too hard to figure out, but
sure.
And it was, that record for me is very natural. I've wanted to do that kind of thing since the early 90s. I've wanted to do that kind of music. You know what I mean? I've always been super partial to that type of Americana type stuff, whatever you want to call it.
Who's your absolute favorite songwriter?
Oh, geez. It just depends.
If you could only listen to one songwriter for the rest of your life, who would that be?
I don't know if I can think of that right now. There's so many greats. Favorite songwriter of all time? I don't know. There's so many great songwriters.
I know it's not an obvious choice, but
I can't pick. I don't have. I
think mine is John Prine.
Is it?
Because he can write. He wrote tunes that were like deadly serious. He wrote songs that were, but he always had this like, he's kind of playful, and he could be really funny. You know, he's a good storyteller. Yeah. And it didn't seem to take himself too seriously, and I appreciate. I appreciate that.
Like a really sweet dude.
Wow! Did you ever see him live?
No.
Fuck.
Never. You?
The greatest. Really? Yeah. the greatest.
Was he just one of those cats that's just so natural on stage and so comfortable with storytelling and
Yes.
that kind of a performer? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thing, man.
He's funny. Like he could,
Yeah.
and not like, not like some crazy vocabulary, just a dude telling a story between songs in the simplest way. Simple and effective and very funny,
And
honest
that's the
way.
secret, man, or that's not the secret. That's the trick. How do you pull off like being super effective and trying to say something that's heavy,
Right.
in a simple way, in simple terms that are that are still colorful or that still are poetic,
I think the trick is to not be afraid of falling flat.
Yeah.
And just because as soon as you're not afraid of falling flat, you're not overthinking it.
Yeah.
And you are in your, you're expressing yourself in your most natural way, an honest way.
And some of my favorite songwriters of the past, I won't say who, but too much, and I don't really care about that anymore. I used to be impressed with it,
right?
You know what I mean? But now I'm kind of like, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you a couple of great songwriters. Darius Koski from the Swingin' Utters.
All right,
is a fantastic songwriter and a fantastic lyricist. Brett Gurewitz is a fantastic songwriter and a fantastic lyricist. I mean, I've always thought it would be so cool to do like an Americana record of Brett's tunes,
right?
Because he's one of my favorites for sure.
I also prefer Bon Scott over, fucking what's his fucking face, Bob Dylan. I prefer Bon Scott over Bob Dylan.
I've never been a super huge Dylan fan.
Is that right?
I know. I feel like I'm just like waiting for it to get struck down or something. But
no,
I just there's some tunes that I really do enjoy.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe I'm just too dumb for it or something. I don't know.
I think I think it's obviously like, who the fuck am I?
You know who I'm a fan of is Jacob.
Right.
I really like the Wallflowers, and I like his solo records a lot. He's great, man.
I think he's really great.
I think he's kind of an underrated dude, and
what
I think
a band,
I think
too.
It's almost like as if his surname is kind of like helped him and hurt him.
Sure.
At the same time, you know what I mean?
Well, it goes back to that expectations thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But I think he's got his own voice.
Yeah.
And he's not trying to be, his old man or anything like that. I think he's great.
That'd be a fool's errand, I think.
Yeah.
Jonny, we got to get you to lunch.
That's right.
I'm so happy that I'm so happy you're here for 3 days. This is probably this is the most amount of time that we've sat and talked, and I'm happy to get to know you more.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for making time. I'm super excited to see the show tonight and to see you play, and also see the Bell Rays too.
Dude, they're smoking, man. They're so great. I'm so excited about touring with them. It's going to be fun.
Thursday night they played over in Bremerton, and I almost went over there to see the show, but it's a ferry ride or a long drive around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I, as always, wish you the best of everything.
Thank you. Likewise. Same to you. Good to see you, Mike Squires.
You're a champ.
Let's do another one of those gigs sometime.
I would love to do another one of those gigs. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that was fun. And Keith's rad too. I dig that guy.
I just talked to him a couple days ago. He did Ricky's record, which is about to come out.
Oh, rad.